Will there be a food crisis for 2023? We've talked about it for almost a year now, talking about food and how it's sparse and how there's some shortages coming, how the cost has gone up. And we still have naysayers saying, oh, it's just a few cents more. Eggs don't cost that much. But let's talk about the facts in this video of what could cause food crisis really to happen even more for 2023. If you didn't feel the crunch at the grocery store, or you didn't feel the crunch in your wallet for the amount of food that you're having to purchase and your dollar not going as far last year, 2022, then you were not paying attention, because it was pretty bad. Now let's talk about 23. Food crisis, is it going to get worse or better? Here's the facts, and then you decide what you think. Make a wise decision. This video is going to be a good one. It starts right now. Hey guys, welcome to The Max. Our goal always on this channel is to give the facts about common sense and gaining wisdom, and then you decide what's best for you and your family. Our goal is to show prepping, homesteading, and sustainable living tends to lean back to olden times, the ways we used to do things. So if you're new to the channel, go down here, press subscribe, ring the bell. Remember, we're going to be doing a massive giveaway at 200,000 subscribers, thousands of dollars worth of gifts, from battery banks to food to seed, freeze-dried foods. There is tons and tons, even down to the coffee and the clothing that sponsors us, and that coffee really does get you going better in the morning. So make sure you're subscribed. It doesn't cost anything to sign up for the giveaway. Just subscribe and you will be entered. Now let's jump on to the video. Will there be a major food crisis in America and in the world for 2023? We've heard shortages, we've seen the prices go up. Will it get any better? There's an article put out by Michael Snyder talking about how he believes that 2023 will actually be a food crisis on steroids compared to what we have seen in 22 and again the years prior to that. Inflation, even though I think it's probably not done correctly like we did in the 70s and 80s, I think we manipulate numbers. However, let's go with their numbers. They're saying that year over year, 7 to 9% is what we saw pretty much in 2022. Even went close to double digits. Now, if you did that CPI, that index, and based it back on what you saw in the 70s and 80s, it would probably be in the upper teens. But I digress. Say, for instance, it was only 7 to 9%. Groceries inflated year over year, the average of 12 to 13%. So not only did you see the inflation numbers be at 7 to 9%, because that's what they were telling us, when it come down to the true dollars that you were spending, it was closer to 12 and 13% when it come to your food. So that means those numbers were probably a little bit more correct. That doesn't mean everything went up to 12 to 13%. Some things went up way higher than that. Some things may have not went up that high. But now that helps you say, okay, for food crisis planning and prepping, we need to make sure we are purchasing things that may have not went up so much and may curb the way we use some of the things that cost a lot. But here's the problem with that. Now let's talk about why the food crisis may even get worse. Not only because the grocery stores are going up. We've seen Aldi, we've seen Walmart, and Kroger, all three supermarkets have said you will see a higher price 2023 than you did 2022. So if you didn't get a 7 to 12% raise at your job, that means your dollars are not going nearly as far, because it's not covering the inflation of what the government's telling you, but also what food is telling you and what it's costing you. Let's jump into a few more things that could even cause more food crisis for this year. There's been several news sites and several politicians say, oh, well, the Fed will pivot. The Fed's going to stop raising interest rates. Jerome Powell came out yesterday in a Yahoo Finance interview and says no rate cuts will be for 2023. There will be no Fed pivot. There will be more inflation risk, and we still remain focused on raising interest rates. Now, he said he may not raise them as much as he did or as aggressive as he did in 2022. But the Fed is not pivoting. So that means the cost of life that we live, the interest rate going up, the way we borrow money, the way we spend money, the way that businesses operate. So say a business is operating on debt, which is what America has put in. We're not operating on our own cash, we're operating on a debt system. That debt costs more. So that debt that costs more for the grocer, for the farmer, for the truck drivers, do you think that they're not going to incur that cost to you? So now the inflation was already bad. The interest rate was climbing. Now the interest rate has climbed to a high percentage, and it's not going to get any better. So we see now the inflation numbers are way up there, higher than what the government's telling us. Now we see the Fed is not going to pivot for 2023, which means interest rates will keep going up, which will mean they're trying to help inflation, but the cost of doing business is still going up for you, and your dollars are not going as far. Still, both those things should be working to help each other, and so far it's not proven to help. It's actually hindering our housing market. It's hindering the cost of goods. It's hindering the way we borrow money. It's not getting better right now. So 2023 may cause another shock to food. This is another study that Yahoo Finance put out. It says that of all the things that they talked about, food was actually only number 4 on the cost of inflation and what it cost year over year, which was at the 12%. Here's the scary thing though. What was on top of it? Airfare, that it was 36% higher 12 months year over year, meaning 12 months prior to now. Household energy, 15% to 16% higher year over year. So, and gasoline being right there with food at 10 to 12%. So let's talk about that. If transportation, airfare, gasoline, the energy to maneuver, and household energy, meaning what it costs to run our homes, what it costs to run the supermarket, what it costs to run the trucks, what it costs to run the farm, if those things are even higher as year over year than what the food is, and they're saying it's not going to get better. If airfare, energy, household energy, gasoline, if all those things go up along with food again, don't you believe that that's going to make another food crisis? Because it's going to make the way we transport our food, the way that we maneuver our food, more costly. So that will cause food crisis. Now we hear, especially in America, and I get a lot of naysayers on these videos and say, well, our supermarkets are stocked up. It's not about the fact of sometimes in first world countries like America not having the food. You're always going to have food, hopefully. It's the fact that it's going to cost you an arm and a leg to purchase it. So it's not just the fact that you're not going to have food, it's the fact that it's going to cost you too much and you're not going to have a dollar to be able to buy the food. Let's talk worldwide. Michael Snyder's study said that crop losses for Germany were over 50%. So expect more food to have to go international. Maybe we're not growing as much food as we needed to take care of ourselves. We're still importing a lot. Well, if we see countries like Germany that lost 50% of their crop yield, that means the international shipping may be tighter, may cost more, may have more issues with food getting to America. Maybe America now has to send some food elsewhere. If we're trying to be humanitarian of the world, trying to have that title, which I want to help folks, I'm not saying that. But if we're going to have to now push food elsewhere, is that going to make our food crisis even worse? 3/4 of U.S. farmers, quoting, says, this year's drought has hurt their harvest. It has made significant crop and income loss. Supply and demand. Less supply, more demand. What does that mean? It means it goes up in price. Another reason for food crisis. Another very shocking situation we're seeing, especially in America, is the amount of theft. The amount of theft. Now, how does that affect food crisis? We've seen Walgreens, we've seen CVS, we've seen Walmarts, especially the neighborhood markets. We've seen the dollar stores. We've seen several grocers, and even in bigger cities, you see several markets say, we're having too much theft, therefore our businesses will have to close in those areas, or we're going to have to go up on price to cover that, or we're going to have to close at certain times. Maybe they're going to go up on price because the loss of income based on the things that were stolen for this prior year. It's like a graduated cost of recovery. That's scary, because that means you didn't steal the food, but because someone stole the groceries and the food, that means it's now going to cost you more. Something to think about. Even though we don't want to talk about the war, it says that FAO, the EU, is sending $15.5 million to avert a food crisis in Ukraine. So now we see a war that's caused issues with the breadbasket of Ukraine. It's caused issues with people literally in starvation even across the world. So now we're starting to see more dollars being sent to cover, more food being sent to cover some of these war-stricken areas. Again, our kind of countries, we want to help people. Now that's one thing I want to make sure that people are not starving across the world. That doesn't mean we give tons of money to, you know, bureaucrats and oligarchs. No, it means we try to help the people who actually need the help, the humanitarian issues. But the problem is, if we're having food crisis, if our money can't go as far, when we're starting to send it over there, that means again we're having more of a worldwide food crunch. It's going to make shortages in some areas and cost of goods in a crisis state for the other areas. The United Nations is warning that hunger in Haiti is at a breaking point. 20,000 people just in the capital is impoverished and have no food or little access to food. A lot of third world countries, even though we're not seeing, a lot of third world countries are now struggling with malnutrition, that they are now having to migrate to find food. So if we see mass migration, which is another reason we're going to see global food crises, because those areas cannot handle the influx of the mass migration. Do I blame the people that are trying to find food? No, I don't blame them at all. But because we haven't taken care of them or done right policies, those people are now struggling and can't have food because they may have a corrupt government. They may not can grow their food. There may be issues with the war and shipping. But because of some of the things that we're implementing, I think we're making our food crisis even worse, not only for us, but for the globe. Lastly, if we see international issues happening, China is starting to lock down again. There's been rumors of wars over in the Asian Pacific because you see, you know, China having issues and doing flyovers. We still have a war going on in Russia and Ukraine. Now all of a sudden we're seeing sickness break out in China again. So if one of the biggest exporters is having issues to get goods here, if shipping issues caused by energy and fuel and war can't get the ships to wherever they're needing to go to take maybe the goods or foods, that is going to cause an issue. No matter what we think, we don't like being globalists, and I'm not a globalist. I want to see America first. I want to see America do well. But because we've put ourselves so wrapped up being the biggest debtor in the world is America, where we used to be the biggest creditor. Did y'all realize that? Back in the 70s and 80s when we were going through inflation, high inflation, and 20% inflation, they were saying, and all this stuff, we didn't have the debt we had. There was more independent people, and we were the ones that people owed money to in the world. Well, now America, we owe more money across the world. We're not in financial shape to help the world, even though we're trying to print more money that we don't have. All these things that we've talked about, the energy, the money, the issues with farming, the issues with airfare, inflation, interest, all those things will make for a 2023 that could be pretty bad on food. If you are not buying food and stocking up now, you need to start. If you're not growing gardens, you need to start. I know that's redundant. I know that I say that just about every video, but it's so true. Understand the value of having a little bit more sustainability and start growing food. Start buying as much food as you can. If it's an extra box of macaroni this week, if it's an extra bag of rice this week, it's not that expensive to buy a little at a time. I've done a video on how to shop at Walmart. I've done a video on how to shop weekly grocery sales. I've done a lot of that. We've talked about how to save money last week. We have to find ways to put money up to then turn around and buy the foods that we need or make more independence to grow the foods that we want. Because these things will make food crisis happen in 2023. And the thing is, as a prepper, as a homesteader, as a sustainable life source, and you hear the cows, they're going crazy, I want to make sure I'm taking care of my family. And I think every man and woman and every parent, every father and mother, and every responsible individual would want that for their families and for America. So I challenge you, the ways to fix food crisis is you. You've got to fix it for yourself, and you've got to take care of it. If you need to work a side hustle to make the money to turn around and buy more, do it. Man, we have like 4 side hustles going on. You don't believe me, I'm telling you, from soap to farm to market gardens to YouTube to my full-time job to all the things that we do. Our goal is to make money, raise money, save money, stockpile cash to then turn around to reinvest in things that matter, which is us, my children, my spouse. Buying the food, buying the farm, and making sure we are growing all that we can and stockpiling all we can. I went to Costco last night, and it blew me away at the money we spent. And we were not buying anything major. Some sundries. It was only one buggy, guys. One Costco buggy. And was several $100s. That's ridiculous. But it's not going to get any better for 2023. So be prepared. Start being wise with your money. Start building the budget to help you get some more freedom with your money to buy the foods that you need, because the food crisis may get worse this year. Guys, hope you enjoyed this video. Our goal is to show you what could happen, and hopefully you'll prepare for it so that way it won't happen to you if all of a sudden you have to go through that valley. Ultimate peace always comes from Jesus, and I hope more than anything, if you're prepared in one way, it needs to be in preparation spiritually. I want you to prepare financially. I want you to prepare physically, mentally. The spiritual is where it's at. Guys, thank you so much for watching. God bless. Happy homesteading, y'all.